All right, welcome y'all to another episode of the United We Will Grow podcast. I am so excited to be here. I can feel myself tingling on the inside because we have such a special guest today. But I first just want to introduce myself. My name is K.Short, and I'm just so excited for us to reflect, refocus, and revitalize our organization. And I'm telling y'all, no one is better at revitalizing our organization than this group of women right here. I'm so excited to be here. So I'm just trying to contain all of my excitement. But I wanted to make sure that we introduce my lovely sister, Candace Sanchez, also.
Yes, and I am so excited to be here as well to have our sister Lupe in the house. I am your co-host, your other half of this United We Will Grow podcast from Everlasting Epsilon Chapter, U class, and Candace Phoenix Sanchez. So I'm so excited to be here. And should I just get it right into it and introduce our amazing guest here? Our
Please
amazing
do.
sister. All right. So Lupe Apasionada Davalos is a sister from the Everlasting Epsilon Chapter at the University of Wisconsin Parkside. She graduated in 2012 with a degree in sport and fitness management. She is currently working in sales operations at Milwaukee Tool, supporting Latin America, as well as a part-time business owner with her family catering business, La Taquiza, which I miss, by the way, Lupe. So just saying, just throwing that out there. So so thank you, Lupe, for being on our show, being on this show, being on our United We Will Grow podcast. So we'll get right into our topics because I think just from my personal experience, me and Lupe have had the pleasure and honor of kind of working together just through my life coaching business. And so when you become vulnerable and you need help or you need some guiding principles for life, she reached out. And what better way than to partner and trust someone that you know, and this is what the sisterhood is all about. And so I was just very honored and humbled that she asked me to be her life coach. And I've seen transformation happen, and sometimes there's bumps in the road and we fall off and we just get right back into it. So if I've taught her anything, it's you can reset, refocus, and again, that's what we're here to talk about. So thank you for being here, Lupe.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. It's so funny that you say that. I was thinking about you the other day and I was like, man, I need some Candace in my life because I think like the learning never really stops. You know what I mean? Like you always have those lessons like in the background, and I was actually thinking like, I'm so appreciative for these lessons, and sometimes you have to like dial it back and remember what you learned, right? And I think that can be said for our life coaching or even in the sorority itself when we were in undergrad. Like, sometimes, when we're in undergrad, like you deal with like super catty things, but I still feel like the cattiness doesn't really change as an adult, unfortunately. It's still there, but you just learn and you adapt, and the only thing that you can control is really like your response for life, right? And I think that's something that you taught me, and I think it's just awesome how I always have to like revert back to all the lessons that you taught me in the past like year, like being my life coach. And sometimes I'm like, man, I gotta call Candace because you go through some things, and I'm like, instead of saying, "Oh Lord," I'm like, "Oh Candace."
I love that. I love to see it and I love to hear it. I want to talk more about that moment, but I want folks to let's catch everybody up as to how you got involved with the organization, and then I want to talk about how you and I met. Obviously, it's not as deep yet with Candace, but then I want to know how you and Candace met. I want to know like how y'all met, and then like I want to transition to that moment as to why did you go with a life coach as opposed to a therapist, and like I just also love how you tapped into our network, and then I want Candace to jump in and be like, if I wasn't pursuing being a life coach, then I wouldn't have been able to help my sister in such an intentional way, right? So let's just bring the audience in. Again, I'm so excited for everybody to be here because I think these are the interviews that and conversations. That's why I got my coffee. I was like, I'm just having a conversation with my sisters. It's just being recorded. Y'all are just so privileged to be able to sit in this room because if you didn't hear the nicknames that were coming out of these women's mouths, first off, I'm a little upset about my nickname because I don't feel like I'm able to hold my own in this room right now, but I'm going to hold it as the turtle in this room and make sure we slow down and make sure we get, to where we need to be. But regardless, Lupe, give us a quick story as to you joining. And I also just want to give a tidbit on this side, you and I, because I know that there's sisters like us that are listening. Us joining a sorority as masculine center women, what was that process like? But in general, just
Yeah.
sprinkle that on top for the other tomboys in the organization if they feel a little lost and lonely and be like, man, these feisty women in here. I was like, it's cool. We can hold it down too. But go ahead, Lupe.
Man, where do I even start? Like, I could be here all day, honestly. I feel like I have to start it back to even when I was in high school. One of the cool things that the Everlasting Epsilon Chapter had at UW Parkside is they had a Gamma Pals program. They were like the first in the whole group of the sorority to have that. I was part of that. I was able to be a part of the Gamma Pals, Gamma Roses program, which is a mentoring program with the members of the sorority, with younger women in the community. They would show up to a basketball game, show up to sporting events, show up to anything that was like relatively important, and just really serve as that like additional village for your mother, for your family. And some of them were mothers of their own daughters that were in the group. So that to me was that was awesome. Like when you're like a first generation student, like a daughter or a son or anybody like of immigrants, life is completely different. You're learning as you go, and so are your parents. And instead of being able to support you all the time, they have to go to work. They're working doubles. They're doing what they need to do for themselves, for everybody else, for their family. So having these women be able to come in and step in and mentor you, even though I was like a little, I don't know if I can swear in here, like I was a little shit. Like I was, like I was a young girl in between that, like what you said, like I was very tomboyish, right? Very rough around the edges. But that was a huge influence to me, and I knew early on, like I would always say, like I can't wait to be in this sorority. I'm gonna be on the stroll team. I'm gonna be out here. Like it was like I was just ready. Like I was.
How
Always,
old were you?
man, I think I was Candace when we met. I want to say I was like about 15, 16.
Oh my
She was in
gosh.
high
Okay, this
school, like sophomore in high school.
Yeah, because
my
my
brain.
She
sister.
was looking up, like her sister was in the organization, and so her
Yeah.
sister pledged. So we always want those legacies, right? But what we were doing at Everlasting Epsilon was, and that's why I got involved, because my girls were part of the program. But I was like, these
Wow.
sisters don't got to get close to my kids. These are my kids. Like I was very territorial, but I loved what they were doing. It was all about the service. It was all about community. It was all about volunteering. And that's what really sparked my interest, was because I'm like, wow, to be a part of someone that's giving back. Because that was rooted in my growing up. My mom taught me to be in Girl Scouts, to make sure you were volunteering, do things at church, so it was just part of my growing up, and then just falling into Gamma just was, it's not coincidence. It was all part of the plan. So,
For sure.
yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like, my sister being in it, like I kind of like really look up to her, and she was all of a sudden my sister's getting rid of all her pink and purple stuff, and like no shade, but for real, and I would be like, why are you getting rid of all your stuff? And she goes, I can only have blue and green now, and I didn't really understand, like, okay, cool, whatever. And I really got to know why it was so important, and like the different sides of it. And I think your perspective, like for the organization, changes over time, even when you're not in it. So for me, my perspective started changing once I graduated high school. I took a semester off. I really wasn't even sure I was going to go to school. I remember you guys all were like, what the heck are you doing? I think I was like a little like, girl crazy or something, just stupid. And I remember we had a sorority sister, Jessica Diaz, we call her Little J, and she was in the admissions office at Parkside. And she was like, no, girl, you're going to school. And her and my sister really helped me and put me in the right position to get into school and get excited about going to school. And I think like that changed everything too. Like Gamma has always been a consistent factor into different segues of my life.
Wow.
Whether I was 15, 16 as a sophomore in high school, to going to school, getting into there, and then I was like, oh, I'm going to be a Gamma. Can't do it in your first semester, obviously. Rules were different back then. Had to wait. And I'm just so excited. Like, I'm like, I want to do this. And like, even throughout the process, like how hard it was, like I'm like the fourth person in my family to be in it, So just having that like dynasty in the background, yeah, that was tough, because I thought I was hot. Like I thought I was you're laughing because you know it's true. I like what they call, now I can't even say it on here, but just that energy. Like I would walk around like chip on my shoulder, like I thought I was hot, you know what I mean? And it's so crazy now, because now I, as an older person, like I'm 34, a little struggling a little bit, like dealing with being in my 30s, like how do I dress? How do I move? Back then you couldn't tell me anything, but Gamma did. They taught me. They put me in place. When you're in a group of women who know who they are, and like they know what you're doing, they know what you're dealing with, they will tell you about yourself. So I grew within the time in my undergrad, but I think I grew the most after. I grew the most like after stepping away for a little bit, and getting into my career. But even my career path was dictated, not dictated, but like really had a lot to do with Gamma, because we had a sorority sister, Madonna Marchand, who got me into ESPN Milwaukee, and that really kickstarted my career. So that's why I say like every little piece of my life has always had Gamma in it since I was 15, 16 years old. No matter how much time I stepped away, like a lot of people knew who I was 10 years ago. Like it was very hard to go through this organization and not know who I was. And I'm not saying that in like an arrogant way. I'm saying it because I was so, my energy, like I walk into the room, I'm not afraid of being in the room. I know I belong in the room, even with 100 women who are just like me, just as passionate as me. But now I kind of had to take that step back and work with Candace and figure out who I was. And again, Gamma has had a huge say in that, because I would not be as comfortable having Candace as my life coach if I didn't know her since I was like 15, 16. So that's like long story short, but honestly, like I could say I'm pretty blessed in this organization. Like I know not a lot of people have had the same experience, but I know that I've had a completely blessed route with this organization.
Wow. That's truly incredible. And I don't know, like I said, I'm just so excited to be here because I want more of these conversations to happen, but like just to see that this Gamma Pals has been a cornerstone for both of you, and to know at that time period, like I'm really just like stunned in such a good way. So I just want to follow up. You said that there's 4 of you in the organization. You said 4, someone. I was like, wait, give me a little background.
She's gonna name drop now, like boom, drop the names. Dynasty.
Wait, I was like, wait, how many? I
Yes,
was like, how many?
yes.
I thought there was only
So
2 of you.
I'm just excited for these names to be dropped.
Oh my gosh, you're funny. I mean, so my cousin Erica Davalos, she is a founder at UW Parkside. So she was one of the ones that started it back in 1998.
So she started the craziness. This is the foundation of the Davalos.
Mic drop. Number 1.
Her, and then my sister Alicia Davalos, or Alicia Mitchell now. She also, I can't even remember what class she was. Very early on. So she joined back in like 2005.
I think she was new class. I think they were before me.
New
before
class.
I
Yep,
new
2005.
Class.
She was in it. So 1998, 2005, and then Erica's sister Prisma at the Mu chapter in 2008, and then me in 2009. Like so.
Wow.
I'm dating myself a little bit. Like 2009 seems like so long.
I know. Can you believe it's already been a decade or so? That's crazy. I love
just
that.
A couple of name drops there, and like we have a little bit of a dynasty going on. I was hoping my little sister would do it, but she ended up going to like a completely different school, and completely different path. But that's all right. We still have plenty in the tank. That's still young, so
I love that.
You haven't seen The Last of Us.
Oh, we know that. So tell me how you and Candace got together. What was going on? And like again, and not, you don't have to get all deep and personal, but like just kind of I want to hear from both of your sides. Like Candace, if you weren't doing this, where would have Lupe gone? I mean, I don't know. And then like why didn't and during those moments, why was life coaching the answer for you as opposed to therapy or other options and modalities out there?
Well, I guess I'll start just because I was a sister in my adult life. I was 33 pledging to be a sister. By the time I graduated, I was 38. My kids were in high school. I was a mom. I was a full-time mom. So I had a lot of life experience. And the sisters saw that. I was kind of like a mother figure for them. I was already a mentor for them. Even when I wasn't a life coach in my business, right? I was always there giving them advice. Candace, how did you get through this? With relationships. I mean, I lived through some very tough times. And so I think for me, it was just that experience and life experience, right? And then when I truly stepped into my advocacy role, where I wrote the book, and then I started creating the podcast, and then I started having this big momentum as far as like wanting to be a change agent, and then the life coaching seed was planted, because it took a lot of people to believe in me before I believed in myself. And that's really the root of what it is, right? It's always, we are our worst critic. And so I remember when Lupe talks about her dynamics of entering the room, that's what I always saw. That's why her line name is what it is. She's got this passion that is just radiates through her body, through her soul, her aura. And, you know, she was just ride or die for Gamma. Like, you know, and to see that, to see her stroll, to take pride. And again, like living up to the dynasty name, to those Davaloses, like especially with Erica being a founder. And that's how we put our footprint here in the Midwest. I'll just say that. So just saying, name drop. So me doing, and then I remember, you know, I was doing life coaching. I wasn't advertising my business, but I was just putting out a lot of positivity, a lot of energy out on social media. And Lupe one day just texted me, you know, she was like, look, I'm stuck. I'm kind of like lost. I don't know what's going on. Like, I need help. Like, and to be that vulnerable, because I knew how Lupe was, for her to be vulnerable because of the energy, the aura, the demeanor that she represented, I knew it took a lot for her to do that. So for her to do that, and I'll say that to anybody, it is okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to stay that way. And so she was immediately saying, I need some coaching, I need some tools in my toolbox. And she had it all. It was just more or less organizing it, giving her some tools, some methodologies, you know, journaling, talking about her goals, like what she really wanted personally, professionally, in relationships. We got really deep. And then I felt Lupe was a great person to be on my podcast. So she came in and she talked about her vulnerability. She talked about some of the struggles she had. And to be that real, it's like you really got to own your shit. That's what I said. You got to own your shit in order to move forward. And once you own it, then you know what? Nobody else can talk shit about you because you're owning your shit. And so I hate to be swearing, but that's really, it was kind of like just owning all of your stuff, whether it's good, bad, indifferent, it don't matter. When you truly can walk in your authentic self and live and be happy with who you are as a person, then you attract the right people in your life. And sometimes you got to let go of the wrong people. And I told Lupe that was okay. So that's kind of like how I felt we got connected. And I'll let Lupe talk about the rest because I think she did the work. I have to say she did the work, and I'm so proud of her. And it's never easy. Sometimes you got to reset, and it's okay.
Yeah, I think like even recently, like I've had like my moments where I'm like, ooh, I think I need to reset again. And I think that's one thing that I learned with you is that sometimes you just have to keep adjusting. It's like you have to keep moving forward. You know, a goal, you can't just have one goal and you have the rest of your life, right? You got to just kind of do it in increments. Like, what can I do now? Because, I mean, that's a human way, right? Where I was, what can I do now? Especially someone who wants to keep advancing, whether it's like in relationships with, you know, being social, networking, or in a career setting, right? Or kind of like figuring out what your purpose is. And I think like for me, like I still struggle with that type of thing. Like I'm like, oh, like should I be here? Where should I be going? Am I doing the right thing? Those are all like valid questions. Like we still have even in, you know, getting into our 30s. Like I'm like, yo, like I'm getting really closer to 40. I think I would have my life together by now. But there's always been like a lot of resources that say like, hey, you're doing good. There's a lot of people that change paths completely, like, no, it doesn't matter what age they're in. You know what I mean? But yeah, that was like I just had to take a moment. Like I was like, you know what? I need a little bit more, like, just to hone in, like, everything that I have going on. Because I've always seemed like a person that has everything going on, right? Like, it's out there, right? And I think even throughout the process, like, you learn, like, actually being confident is, for me, just dialing it back, not letting everybody know my move. Because I think one of the things I struggled with my whole life is not having that, like, external validation. Because, like, again, I talked about it earlier, your parents can't always be there. And I can't fault them for that, right? That's just not the way that life is, and that's okay. But because of certain things, I realized that I needed external validation and maybe at the wrong places. So going through the process with Candace and, like, understanding, like, my path at the time and what I needed to do. And again, like, sometimes some people needed to be removed. That's always the case, like, even so on in life. I just felt like now I'm a lot more confident in who I am because I know who I am, because I was able to be vulnerable, like, with myself. And that's huge. Like, sitting in a room with yourself when you are not 100 is one of the hardest things, especially when you're someone like me who is just completely out there and has so many different connections and tie-ins with people. Like, everyone thinks they know who Lupe is, but Lupe didn't even know who Lupe was for a second. Like, I was, and when you get to that point, you start people pleasing. You start just doing what feels right for everyone else, and you don't start doing what feels right for you. And that's why I say, like, sometimes I sit here and I'm like, man, maybe I need to reset a little bit again. Go back to one-on-one. Take those little steps, make those 3-5 goals, and stick with it until I get to a point where I feel happy here.
And I think one thing I'll add is, like, when Lupe was doing the work, at least from the experience, I just gave Lupe tools, right? We all have tools, right? It was basically to journal. And to, if you don't journal and you don't document where you are at a point in time and where you are a month from now, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, she were to go back to her journal, she'd be like, I have come a long way. And that's where it's like, we need to celebrate our wins. You know, we can't be keeping up with people on social media. We need to get rid of that imposter syndrome. We need to stop trying to think we're going to be like the next big thing. Just be you, be authentically you, be happy, take care of yourself. You know, I think those are the things is when you start to really understand your worth and your value and like how far you have come, you know, compared to maybe where you were a year ago. That stuff needs to be celebrated. And that's kind of some of the tools that I use with my coaching program and shared with Lupe is like, just kind of see where you are today and then journal about it, and you'll see where you are a month from today. You're going to be in a much better spot. And again, it's all about mindset, right? Changing that mindset. And she was dropping some nuggets of information. She sure the heck was dropping nuggets of information based on her experience. So
I got a brand new journal. Like, you know, like there's things that, like, I've gone back to my old ones, like same like what you said, and I'm like, okay, I was there before. Now I'm able to see how I've changed and how I'm able to react to certain situations that are happening now. So, I mean, you mentioned earlier like the difference between like therapy versus like life coach. Like, I think it's important to have both, to be able to at least try to have both, because there are a lot of internalized like things that people go through, like whether it's, you know, PTSD from early age, you know, things that you go through even through high school that you maybe may not mention, all types of trauma, you know, like we all know, like there's all types of trauma, but there's a lot of things that we don't want to unpack, but sometimes we have to, because they're preventing you from moving forward in a certain way. Right. And there's still stuff where I'm just like, oh, heck no, you better stay in that box. And I know eventually, like, I might have to open that box a little bit, right? But it doesn't mean I'm still not nervous. And I'm scared to open that box. But I'll tell you I am. And it's not like I carry that chip on my shoulder. I realized was just a bunch of, like, trauma and insecurities that I carried. And I was just walking around trying to cover it up, being Lupe out here on the stroll floor. And, you know, I enjoyed it. But that can only get you so far. Sometimes you really got to face who you are, because it'll catch up to you. So I'd say therapy, life coaching, like if you're able to have access to both those things at one point in your life, whether it's not at the same time or you know, at one point at another point, I would definitely recommend doing that and like utilizing your resources.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like just to like chime in really quick. I feel very similarly with you, Lupe, but yours was very bodily, like strolling, right? Mine was very much like videos and documenting in that way. And I realized more recently, I was like, me being on YouTube and being vulnerable was my self therapy and my self coaching, right? Because I didn't know who to turn to, I didn't know who to talk to. And so I just was like, I'm just going to record videos because it made me feel better afterwards. I was able to get it out. Now it's all my trauma out in the world. Yeah. You know what I mean? But like, I still get to look back. That was a form of documentation for me, along with journaling too. And to look back, like I started watching some old videos. I was like, I'm so happy I got over that thing. But then there's some stuff I'm like, I'm still going through that thing. You know what I mean? And so I think the importance of documentation and like talking about this podcast again, like, you know, we're talking about being at certain stages in our life, like who knows what's going to happen with podcasting. We're looking at this 10 years later, you know what I mean? Like how important it is for us to see how good we look, first off, but second off, you know what I mean? Like, you know, to see where we're at as an organization too. So, I mean, I think that's incredible and important for us to talk about in terms of, especially if there's a lot of folks who are listening, like document the process, however that looks like for you, you know what I mean? But journaling is always such a good way to go. So I love that. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, so Lupe, I just wanted to kind of circle back. You know, in your bio, you mentioned how, you know, you graduated with your degree. You know, now you're working in sales at Milwaukee Tool. Talk a little bit about, you know, your career path. I know you talked about how Gamma's kind of been impacted, in your career path, your journey of life. So as far as like where you are now at this company, tell us a little bit of what you're doing, how you're doing it. And really, I think what the sisters would appreciate is what professional advice could you give to our sisters that are listening?
Throw in the taco truck too, please. Thank you.
Yes, La Taquiza. Oh my God. If you're ever in Wisconsin and Lupe has a private whatever, because I know they only did it seasonally, but I don't know, Lupe, like where your business stands. So let's talk all about all
I don't
that.
want to do an announcement on here.
No, I know.
I read
That's
that's
all
not
good.
allowed. I read that and you're like, no, I'm just kidding. So, I mean, I'll start off by saying, I'll drop this again later. Be open to change. Like, college does not mean that your path is set in stone. At all. Truthfully. It's a great experience. Meet lots of people and be nice. I'll say that. That's my tidbit of advice for you undergrad people. Please be nice. Don't be a mean girl. And make friends. Because your friends will get you paid. Okay? All right. So I'm going to move forward. I wanted to do sport management, mainly like sports marketing. So I started off, getting that opportunity at ESPN, thanks to, our sorority connection there. It was a good experience. I got to wear many hats. I realized, like, I worked at the Milwaukee Brewers. Like, I'll drop a lot of names of big companies. And I'm very blessed to have worked with some of the best in class brands in their own segments. And that is one thing that I'm really proud of to put on my resume, is that I've had experience carry over from a lot of these brands. And ultimately it led to me, trying to open my own business for a bit, which I'll touch base on. But I think I was so young, and I would say I'll say regret, because sometimes I'm like, dang, kick myself in the foot, is I focused on the money. There's not a lot of money in sports when I started. You get paid, you're getting out of college, you're making 28, maybe 32 a year, and you're like, I'm in debt for more than that. Like, what is really going on? And you realize that the dues in sports at the time are a lot more, it's like you got people waiting 10 years to get into a good, like a manager role, or like even like an associate manager role. And that's just not something at the time, maybe even now, that I was patient enough for. I was like, you got your parents telling, why'd you even go to school? You literally could work at a factory and make more money. And I'm like, damn, they're right. I'm over here working 80 hours a week, barely making enough to pay my stuff, pay my loans back. And that made me start looking a little bit more. I looked to other brands. I ended up going to Coca-Cola at one point, which was awesome as a salesperson. I got into sales, like, truthfully, because it was a quick way to get money, and I was so focused on getting those little, like, lavish. I love sneakers. If y'all follow me, you know I love sneakers. I still do. But, like, I focus on, I will say I truthfully focus on the wrong thing. I focus on the wrong thing too quick, right? If I would have had a life coach back then, Candace, no, I might have played the long game, and I maybe would have been a little bit happier early on, right? And doing things that I really felt tapped into and really ultimately passionate about. I worked for Verizon. I worked for a lot of other big brands, Grainger, which is a really good one, all sales roles. And I realized how stressed I was. Like, sales stresses me out. Anybody that does sales, my hair's falling out. I had gray hairs. Like, I was gaining weight. Like, you're on the field too much. I realized, like, this isn't for me. COVID happened, lost my job at Grainger, and I decided to, like, hey, I'm a hustler. Like, I got to make my money. So what is my family good at? Making food. So it's like really monetizing like what my family is good at and working together to create this business that is seasonal. And it's something that in the future we're working on making it a little bit more permanent. So just hang on. But I realized like all the things that I had learned from these best in class big brands, I was able to utilize to really focus on creating a brand. Like I will say the La Taquiza brand, even though we're not around a lot, still is strong. People know who we are. We've won Taco King 3 years in a row in Racine. I know that if we show up to a Taco Fest here in Milwaukee, I still feel really confident about doing well. But I think like I thought initially too, starting a business was like, I'm gonna be good at this. We're gonna make tons of money, and you don't think about the cost. You don't think about the time. When you're in a family business, we're like this. we stopped spending Sundays together as a family. We stopped doing Sunday brunches together. Like, it just became so toxic for our family for a little bit. And I think the best thing that we could do was kind of like take a break, right? Because my relationship with my parents was starting to get strained. And that could not happen. My relationships with my siblings. So taking this break has been really nice. And then obviously being able to revamp how we do business. Like, I did not know half the things I know now. Get an accountant, like figure out stuff with the IRS, like don't get screwed like with stuff like that. Like me, like truthfully, like I made a lot of mistakes that I own, but I put them all on my shoulders because I'm the one that put this on my shoulders, right? So I'm trying to fix it, and now what I'm doing is revamping and hopefully being able to hand it off to my family. Because now, like, I was able to come to Milwaukee Tool in between, you know, I needed a job, I needed something, I needed pay, I needed health benefits, I, you know, needed all of it. And I find myself working for the best tool brand in the world. Like, we are, you know, killing it. And I feel like I have a really good home here, and I'm able to utilize skills that I never would have, you know, thought I would utilize again in a non-stressful environment, right? But I still have the goal in my mind to get back to this because I know that my family needs it. So I don't need it. I get paid okay. I can, you know, do what I need to do, but this is my job. It's not what ultimately makes me like, yes, like wake up in the morning. No. Can it be like, can it get me by? Yes, but you should always have something in your mind that makes you, you know, happy. Like, where's my purpose at? I'm still figuring that out. But I know that I was happy selling tacos. I know that I was happy meeting members of the community and being able to impact the community in a different way. You know, being able to have people that were comfortable, you know, coming to us no matter what ethnicity or anything. Like, we had so many different people from every type of background come to us, you know, and having people that are comfortable to speak Spanish and come to us for food and request for catering and things like that. That's all super important to me. And now it's like looking at it, how can I help my parents who came to this country literally for us to live a better life? Like, how can I help them stop working so much? Like, having my dad working in construction, having my mom work at a factory right now. Their bodies are breaking down. This is a way easier alternative, and they're really good at it, and it truly makes them happy. So it's like, right now I feel like I'm focused a little bit more on like, how can I get this back in their hands and give them control over this brand to where they can make it work for them, and it could be kind of like their like gentle retirement plan and see what they want to do with it, right? But yeah, that's like the gist of it. I feel like I'm still learning my way. I don't, you know, I'm 34. I don't feel like I'm by any means. I still think there's a way I can go back into sports, but I think it's just me being open to like possibilities. And you always want to keep your eye open. It's like you keep your ear to the streets. You always want to keep your eye open because there are different opportunities for you. I think long gone are the days where you stay somewhere for like ever. And it's like, this is just where I'm at, because it's not who we are as people anymore, right?
Right.
Back then, people were so focused on getting the bills paid, about, you know, retirement and things like that. Now it's like, if my soul feels drained somewhere, I don't want to be there, because I know ultimately it's just like ruining my mental health. So,
and I think that had a lot to do with the pandemic. If the pandemic taught us anything, it taught us, you know, that we paused and we actually focused more on relationships and like really digging into your own feelings, because, you know, we were all isolated for a whole long freaking time. And that's when I think a lot of people realized, instead of chasing that paycheck, they started chasing their passion and what made them happy, right?
Yeah.
That's really what I feel happened.
Yeah, I love that. And I want to transition really quick and talk about just the quick connection between the experience that you got and then you joining the NEB. I know that you and I worked with each other for a little bit. I mean, I think where we were at personally, we were, you know, maybe wasn't, you know, the best time, but if we were to do it now, ooh, we would kill it. Ooh, we would kill it. So just want to let y'all know, okay? But yeah, Lupe was VP of communications for a second, and then I somehow stepped in and made a VP of marketing. We didn't know. I mean, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just like, I just make videos for Gamma. This is what I do. You know what I mean? And so, talking about that with Lupe. So I just want us to transition and get to the revitalized part and just and talking about encouraging sisters to continue to stay involved in the organization. But I just want to know how that experience was for you. And just, yeah, just like any advice for folks in terms of continuing to serve and what it means to be on the NEB and all that sorts and just that experience in general.
Yeah, I think, man, I feel like being revitalized like with the organization is like life. You know what I mean? There's times where you're gonna have those little ups and downs through life, like, you know, even throughout like how I've been feeling with like my family business. A big example is like, do I want to do this? Do I? But like ultimately, something keeps pulling you back to it, right? I think at the time when I served on the NEB, I was really passionate for a hot second, and things changed. You know, personally, like my time started being stretched a little bit more thin. I maybe didn't have the best relationship at the time, where I felt like I always had to be people pleasing, right? Felt like I wasn't enough in one area of my life, so the rest of my life kind of struggled. But being VP of communications with the group that we had at the time was awesome, and I wish I would have been able to give it a lot more back then, because it really did deserve a lot more. And I mean, we had an amazing board. I'll name drop. We have Najoni, who is awesome wherever you are. Miss you. We had Fifi as our VP. We had Brianna, Brianna is me and Bree are very like hype Gamma. Like back in the day when you thought about Gamma, you thought about Bree, and then came me, and then came, you know, and then you have like people like Anna, Erica, like the Maritza, like the, you know, the stroll team that I was on that we went to compete at Silk, the national show in Vegas. Like there was just so many high energy people that were involved at the time, but I think all of us at the point of our lives, like, you know, it's like late 20s, right? You're still transitioning through life. But it was a good experience to see how Gamma operated. Man, Gamma is truly a business, like at the end of the day, and we do got to look at it that way, and like how to protect it, and how like Gamma has to protect itself from itself sometimes. And I think in undergrad, like we view things so small. I used to fight the board back when I was in undergrad, and I thought that was funny. It was not funny, because I know when I was on the board, I was like, these kids stress me out. But let me tell you, I used to fight the board. I apologize to the board that Melinda was on. I'm sorry. I know I gave you guys a hard time, but I'm grown now and I can understand that and I can admit. But like sometimes you got to learn how to fight things in the right way, right? Like one of the key things that we did when I was in undergrad was change a couple of policies and procedures. And luckily enough, we could have access to that because we're still young. We're still a young organization, and we're allowed to change things about ourselves. Our mission statement has changed. You know, things in our branding has changed, all for the betterment of our organization. And I didn't really understand that until I served on the board. And I was like, man, everybody should serve. Everybody should serve. Because then you would know how hard it is to maintain our organization and what a headache you were as an undergraduate. Truthfully. It changed my life. Like there's times like, you know, recently, like I wish I could go back and serve again, especially with the group of people that we were with. But I think that we have if you have someone that wants to serve and is putting themselves in that position, like, man, check on them, see how they're doing, see if they need help, because I think like times have changed. You know what I mean? Like Greek life isn't as strong as it used to be. And that makes me a little bit sad because there's so many really cool like sisters that are out here doing things, and you guys doing this podcast is so sick to me. This is something that I had in mind even when I was like, we would talk about this, K.Short, I was like VP of communications. I'm like, we need to do something like this because you're just continuing to serve as a resource for other people that may not have the Facebook, may not have the Instagram, may not have that social media life panned out, right? And it's just another avenue, and we need stuff like this. We need stuff like this to continue to spread and reach everybody else, because I think we all go through the same things. We all go through very similar situations, and there's always going to be someone in our organization that you can talk to. And that's something that, like, you know, that's something that we can't take for granted. Like, we're not all always going to get along. We're not always going to have, like, the same mentality when it comes to things in life. But, like, we always got love for this organization, and I think it's going to take all of us to really continuing to make an impact and keeping Gamma alive and strong.
Oh, I love it. I love everything that you're saying, Lupe, is exactly why we wanted to do this podcast. And I'm so glad that you are on here dropping tons of nuggets of information. So I want to kind of, you touched on it a little bit, but I want to talk a little bit about, you know, a sisterhood story. You know, tell us a story, you know, like when sisterhood really stood out for you, besides, you know, us being life coach and all that. or a relationship that you've had with a sister that really kind of developed over time, or and just how the sustainability of sisterhood to you. I want to talk a little bit about the sisterhood.
There's so many, like,
Yeah.
oh, I can't say enough like how like lucky I am to have the experience that I've had. But a lot of it, you get what you put out. Like, I'll put that out. I gotta say that. You can sit and you can mope about a situation, but you need to learn how to like put out the right energy, and you will get that back tenfold. That's the first thing. I have so many, but I will say, like, I mentioned them earlier, but like I jumped on a stroll team. I was the only one from Wisconsin doing this all on video, iPhone chat. Like, we had iPhone 5s back then. So we're FaceTiming, and they're teaching me these 3 strolls, and I'm like, hell, this is hard. Like, these girls are serious. They're like, you better hit your arm movements. People are watching me at the office looking at me crazy. You better hit your arm movements good, right? Anyways, we're training for like 3 months. We go to Vegas. And I meet them for the first time in person. Like, 2 of them for the first time in person. One of them, Maritza, I had met before at national conventions. That's why it's very important to go to national conventions. You get a lot from that. But we clicked and we connected so well. They are people that I text weekly. There's times where it's like we go months without talking, and then when we need each other, it's crazy the random text you'll get or the random Snapchat you'll get from one of them. But I'm able to go out to Seattle and visit, or I can go to Charleston and visit Erica and just connect with them in that way. And that all came from a stroll show 10 years ago in Vegas. And it was like, I don't know who does that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even know, like I tell people all the time, and they're like, you don't even know these people like that. You just stay at their houses, and when you go visit, absolutely. Candace knows. She went with me to Seattle. Seattle's probably one of my favorite places in the world, and I would never have known if I did not have sisters out there to go visit.
Yep.
You know? So I think a lot of other sisters have really cool stories. Like, there's times where I have like a long layover. I'm in Arizona, Phoenix. I could literally call one of our founders, Val, and she'll go pick me up. I've stayed at Val's house when I was young. I was a little drunk, and she took care of me. She took me in the airport. And she, like, I had one of the best conversations ever with her. And I still feel like she'll still check up on me, and she's always, you know, like a mentor as well, where she's like, what are you doing? But she'll be able to tell me about myself sometimes. And I think I have so many sisters that do that. Like, you guys got to take advantage of that, because it's more than just your chapter. You know what I mean? And that was one of those things that I could never be able to repay that. Like, the memories that I have, stories I can't tell, really cool memories of just going to more national conventions and meeting each other, and then being able to like go home and like you meet some of their families, you meet their kids know who you are. At the end of the day, it's what I put out there. I wanted that, so I got it. So
Yeah, I love that, sis. And just to wrap it up, you know, from the past 15 years and a couple more with Gamma, if you could just wrap it up into one package and advice to the future of the organization, what would it be? And then, of course, how they can get connected to you afterwards.
Yeah, I think go back to what I said, like, you're going to get out what you put in. And I think that's the same with life. But for this organization to really thrive, we need more apasionadas. We need more people that are willing to carry, you know, this organization on their back some days. And being understanding that all of us have a different level of commitment to the organization. But if you can and you have it in your heart to do it, you should, with no fear, because it's only going to make this organization better. And I think that when you are in a leadership position, you can't go in there with any type of like ego, right? Because this organization, she is depending on you. The stories that we have, the history, like go back and read like our sacred stuff, like that I can't talk about on here, but go back and read those things and really sit with yourself and reflect, because that's everything. You know, like I'll go back and I look at my binder and things like that, and I'm like, oh, I forgot about this story. And you got, you know, the people like Minty who came up with, you know, our song. And sometimes like I'll go on YouTube and I'll listen to, I can't remember the sister that sang it, but she sang it so beautifully. And sometimes that's like what you need. I don't know, like the passion is gonna go up and down like anything else in life, but when it hits you and like it keeps calling you, just go for it. Because it could really help you as a professional, and it could help you also with your like social connections and like that, like building more of a bond with other sisters. You never know when you need them.
So Lupe, how can everybody get connected with you?
With me,
Do you want people to get connected with you? No. Follow you on socials?
I'll give you guys my ads. Instagram is probably the best way. It's or my Facebook is active. I'm not on there as much, but I would say at I_am_loops. I'll never change it. It's always going to be that. But I do hop on my Instagram a lot. If you want to find me on TikTok, it's literally the same name. But yeah, feel free to reach out to me. I throw my phone number out on here, but you know, it's a little.
No,
You never know who might
that's
call
okay.
you.
Yeah, no, they can find you on IG. It's all good. Or Facebook.
Love that.
So we appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. Thank you for being a guest on the
Lupe,
podcast.
thank you. I know we want to let you go so you can do your thing, but thank you so much, and we will definitely stay connected afterwards. So thank you so much for taking the time. We appreciate you.
Yeah. Thanks for
Love
having
you,
me.
sis.
All right, love you guys too.
Love you.
Bye.
All right, y'all. I know that was like a quick little jump off. We was, I just want to be transparent with y'all. We got sisters in here who are doing this in between work meetings, you know what I mean, during their work day. And so we just want to say thank you to all the sisters who've made time for us thus far, you know what I mean? But I think that's just a great like moment to acknowledge, like that's how you fit Gamma into your life. To some extent, you find us in the gaps. You know what I mean? Like even Candace and I doing this ourselves. We were like, okay, we have this time and this time, and this is how we can serve, and this is how we can help, and this is how we can document and capture our stories. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of times where people think like it needs to be this full-fledged, full-time thing. It's like, no, it's like in those gaps, and it's because you know that every little stone that you put down, it's setting the foundation for our organization. So I just want to shout out to everyone who's been on our podcast thus far and definitely fit us into the moments that they could have been resting or they could have been doing anything else in the world, but y'all are here with us, and we just want to say we really appreciate that. But speaking of that, Candace is also in the middle of her workday, but I wanted just to have a moment of just a debrief with Lupe, because you all have such a special relationship. I was so surprised to hear since 15 years old, like what? My brain is just like stunned right now. I'm like, what is going on, and how did I miss that? And now I know why you all call yourself Midwest, because of course I'm in the Southwest. I was like, look, you can never take, the founding land from us, but I also am like, okay, I understand Wisconsin now, and this makes a lot of sense. So Candace,
Well,
I just want to give you
yeah.
a moment.
Yeah, 17 years I've known Lupe, just, before she became a sister. But it's just amazing. Again, it's the power of connection, the power of relationship, the power of this sisterhood, right? True
Yeah.
testimony of how, we help to shape women be who they want to be when they grow up, right? And it's never too late. And I think Lupe said a lot of great information. She said, she had to be patient with herself. There's no right or wrong way on your path. Like, there's different things. You have to reset, restart, refocus, revitalize. But she said, the sorority has helped to, at different points in her life, she was still bringing Gamma back, whether it was a network opportunity or, getting her first job, through another sister. It's the possibility of how the sisterhood has benefited her in her life. And I liked how she talked a lot about like the therapy and the life coaching aspect, like having both. And I know for me in my coaching program, if people are looking for a therapist, I'm not a clinician. I go to therapy first and then come hire me later as your life coach. Like I'm more of the change ambassador, the life cheerleader in your life, because it's possible. Whatever you want in this life, it's all about your mindset and about how you approach that. And I loved how she shared about the NEB and the service in the NEB and how, she wishes she could kind of go back, but just having that experience, and how she talked about the viewpoint from an undergrad to now being on the board. And I think a lot of times when you're in an undergrad, you have a certain thought process of what the alumni should do for you. You have a certain thought process of what the NEB should do for you. But in all actuality, they're all tied. We need to do each other. We need to be there for each other. We need to make sure we're understanding, right? NEB has a really tough job, as Lupe described, to keep this organization going And so we
Right.
need to check up on them. How are they doing? So at nationals, I'm going to make sure to check up on the NEB. Do you guys need help with anything? Is there anything I can do? I know I'm just a guest or a spectator here, but what can I do to help serve you? Because I can only imagine how they're trying to plan nationals, run the organization. That's a lot. Plus, they're all probably working full time and have families. So again,
That
just
part.
being mindful of all the things that they're juggling. And so it kind of makes me appreciate, right, working with Esme, working with having an intern to help us with this podcast. You know, these are important roles and functions, but again, to the work and the effort that we're doing, the service that we're doing to provide a platform such as this to tell the stories of a sisterhood that is near and dear to our hearts. And I just feel like very proud to be doing this work. You know, yes, while we juggle all the things, but we're taking time for something that means something to us. Because again, in 10 years, we're going to look back and go, dang, we did that. We were able to do this. And to me, it's just amazing. I just love it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I love
and
it.
you're such a great host, K.Short.
Thank
Me and you co-hosting together. You know, you
Yeah.
keep me on my toes. You keep me bright. You're teaching me tools, girl. I'm using AI like crazy now. I'm like,
Yes.
oh my God. I'm like, I'm actually going to do an interview about AI. So I just, again, like the value of knowledge, forces coming together, whether you know each other or not, like we're forming this relationship. It's fostering a healthy, loving, committed friendship relationship. We're sisters for life. And I'm so
Yeah.
grateful. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No.
Thank you.
I'm so grateful too. I even feel even just being in it and doing it. You know, of course, again, we talk about like, oh, well, we're doing this and we're doing that, but it's like it's these moments right here. Like I think today was such a perfect example of what the sisterhood is and continue to be for so many people in the future. And then again, just the last thing is the importance of of contributing to it. You know what I mean? Because I was saying, you know, fit it in the gaps. But if there's a moment, and I think this is something that you and I can talk about, there's moments where you're feeling lost, you don't know what to do, don't know how to transition out of the situations that you're in, or need to pivot in a career or whatever the case. If you don't know what to do, I would say get involved with Gamma to some extent. Be like, look, you don't know what to do, but this is a place where you can figure it out, be creative, explore, experiment, whatever the case may be. And the best part about it is you get to come in and show up as your full self and what you feel like you want to contribute best and build on that skill. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's a win-win situation, y'all. So we just want to say thank you so much to Lupe again for being a guest. Candace, I just want to say thank you so much again for being my co-host and for us doing this work. And yeah, we just want to say thank you for everyone who's been listening to us. We know it's fun and you know, just new ground for all of us. But we also want to say thank you to our intern. We also want to say to Isabel. We also want to say thank you to Maria. We also want to say thank you to the current NEB for believing in us. And we just want to say, you know, we're all in this together. And at the end of the day, united, we will grow. So thank you.
Mic drop.
Mic drop. I was going to leave it at that. So thank you all for joining us. And we will see you in the next episode on the 25th. Thank you for listening.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.